Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this week's show. Let's get through a little housekeeping first, this beautiful, sunny, cold February day. A few weeks ago, I did a show and I mentioned how I do not claim at all to be an expert on anything having to do with women's health. And I mentioned Susan Weed and Rosemary Gladstar as having written some very good books on the subject, lots of articles, lots of videos. A friend of mine in one of the forums I'm in MeWe said that she recommended highly the book Naturally Healthy Pregnancy, written by Chandra Parker. That's another recommendation you can use out there. And the name of this group is Christian Herbalists. You can find it very easily on MeWe. I'm on there a lot, and we're always glad to answer any questions. And she wanted me to mention, her name is Debbie Sapp, by the way. Debbie wanted me to mention that people are welcome to go on that group, Christian Herbalists, and ask questions. And we're all, pretty helpful, friendly folks, and we've got several clinical herbalists that are in the group. So it is a very good resource. If you want to make use of that, it's totally free. MeWe's a fun, much more enjoyable social media than say Facebook or Twitter or anything, nasty and mean like that. MeWe's groups are generally really super helpful, friendly, decent folks. There's several herb groups on there that I'm a member of which I'm a member, I guess I should say. And Jack Spirko, Survival Podcast, they used to have this huge chat room. They moved it all to MeWe. So if you're a prepper, if you're into that kind of thing, uh, Jack's Jack Spirko is a great guy. I've followed him for a very long time. I mean, I don't even know how many years he's been doing his podcast, but I still remember listening to episode one. And he's into herbs, he's into permaculture, he's into a lot of interesting stuff. He's a very, very smart guy, and the people in his group are, I mean, it. Let me tell you, you spend about 5 minutes in some of these groups, and you'll realize how dumb most of the people on Facebook are. I mean, there are some very smart people on MeWe. Gab is another one. I love Gab. There's some excellent herbal and homesteading type groups on Gab. Some great homeschooling groups. I communicate with a lot of people on there, and Getter's pretty good. Parlor used to be better than it is now, but and Cloud Hub was really good, and then like Parlor, they both just kind of fell apart. I don't know what happened to Cloud Hub, but I think the problem really with with those platforms is people think they're just on there to talk politics. All they want to talk is politics, and there's a whole lot more to life than politics. I love these free speech platforms where we can speak our minds and not worry about being censored. But there is a whole lot more to life than politics, and out of those three, really Getter is probably the more interactive, more lively one right now. I mean, Parler's kind of gone dead. Cloud Hub's groups used to be very active, and they're not anymore. And there's another one called My Freedom Book, which is I don't even know why I bothered to post there because I mean it is just like an echo chamber. It's like it's just an empty. No one. There's no interaction between members there whatsoever. But those are the social media I'm on. If you ever want to look for me, and if you want to find me on something like Cloud Hub or My Freedom Book or Parlor, and start talking, hey, maybe you can liven things up, right? I mean, somebody's got to do it. But yeah, really, MeWe and Gab, and to some extent, Getter is getting there. But MeWe and Gab is where you can go and do some really great chatting about herbs and gardening. There's so many good gardening groups, cooking groups, really fun, and I really enjoy that. And of course, always the forums at the Grow Network. Um, there are a couple of great prepper forums I'm on. The first is PrepperNet. PrepperNet is run by a guy right here in North Carolina, and really enjoy interacting with people on there. Um, I'm actually the moderator of the Single Preppers group, both there and on the other prepper site, the Prepared Homestead Network. That they're both just really great people. They're people that are interested in, independence and self-sufficiency, resiliency. We talk just a lot about gardening. We talk about medicinal herbs. We talk about hunting and fishing and cooking and a lot of a lot of characters. We joke around a little bit. So hey, join us there too. That's PrepperNet. Great. It's huge, actually. PrepperNet is the big one. And then the Prepared Homestead Network just launched, I think, maybe 2 months ago. Travis put it out there, and it's garnered a lot of great folks. And like I said, I'm a moderator of the single preppers groups on both sites. Plus, on Prepared Homestead Network, I have an herbal group and a group for sharing recipes. I love food and I love to cook, so that's fun. That's my social media, and it's so much nicer, so much nicer than being on Facebook or Twitter. I gotta tell you, if you're still on those nasty dinosaur sites, get off of them as quickly as you possibly can because they are poisoning your mind and your soul. I'm not kidding. Even if you got a nice group of friends on there, some of the stuff that you will pop up, some of the stuff you see is really going to give you a negative outlook on life. So I highly recommend migrating off of those big tech websites to sites that actually allow free speech and allow free expression and aren't dominated by mean, nasty, often people that aren't even real. A lot of those people, especially on Twitter, are bots. Well, especially on Facebook too. They're not real. There are trolls, but they're not even human beings. They're just there to make trouble. And I don't understand why anyone would spend their time trying to sow seeds of discord. I mean, we're all one family. Uh, you know, as any family is, the human race obviously doesn't get along very well. And that's just part of the thing. I mean, people always say, even Jesus chose 12 disciples, and one of them was Judas. There's always going to be a troublemaker. There's always going to be, a difficult person. But in Facebook and Twitter, those tend to be the majority of the people on there, and a ton of bots, a ton of just electronic things that are there just to make people angry, just to make people depressed, just to hurt people's feelings. And that's stupid. We don't need to support that. We don't need to be part of that. You come over to the Grow Network, we don't allow anything like that in the forums. Okay? None of it. And I can say that's true about the PrepperNet, Prepared Homestead Network. You're going to find I'm sure on like Gitter and Gab and Parlor, some trolls, but the group leaders there on like Gitter, I mean on Gab and MeWe, pay a lot of attention to their groups. And when someone complains, they look into it very quickly and they boot those people out of there. So it's a nicer environment on all that I mentioned. So take that, for whatever it's worth. It would be best if we didn't spend a whole lot of time online at all. But hey, it's the middle of winter. What else you gonna do, right? Me, I'm writing books and planting next spring's garden. I'm gonna increase my planting, my vegetable and garden beds. I've got about 10,000 square feet of yard space to work with that I haven't planted before. and I've designed my beds as double reach biointensive beds. That means I'm not planting in rows. I'm planting in what we call drifts. I'm planting wide beds that are slightly raised. I'm not putting in planks and making traditional raised beds. What I'm doing is double digging. In double digging, you dig down a foot. You take the topsoil, the top foot of dirt, and lay it over. Then you take a spading fork or a broad fork and you loosen up the soil another foot down. Put in a layer of compost or mulch, really, sticks and twigs. I mean, any organic matter you can put in there. Then put the soil back on top and turn the topsoil upside down so that all the weeds are killed. And then put another layer of mulch on top or compost. That gives you a bed that is, you want it as wide as you can reach in from either side and reach the middle. Now, I'm 6'4". I can make pretty wide beds, I mean, honestly. But I found about a 4 foot wide bed. It's just real convenient. Then I'll put like a 3 foot wide path in between the beds so I can pull, I can move a wheelbarrow. I can drag stuff through there, not worry about it. You want to do your raised beds so that you never step in there and compress the soil. You're constantly adding more organic matter on top. And then each year you just go back through with a broad fork or spading fork and loosen the soil, add some more mulch. When your plants grow up and die at the end of the season, you just chop them down and let them rot. Chop and drop. And it's a great way to do it, but I'm going to take this approximately 10,000 square feet of yard and clear out a bunch of old scrubby bushes and things that just really aren't doing me any good. Um, there's some trees that have gotten damaged and diseased that need to go. They'll give me a little more sunlight in my yard. And I've got a big, it's going to take a lot actually. But yeah, I'm going to plant at least 6,000 feet more vegetable and herb beds this spring. And hey, maybe I'll document that and I'll show you how I do it. Garden design is something I really enjoy doing, and planting those really productive beds. I mean, if you plant your gardens this way, I'm totally not kidding. You can lay them out in a square foot fashion. When one annual grows up and it's fruited, you can pull it and put in another one. You can do a lot of perennials, so you don't have to keep coming back to it. A lot of our herbs are perennial, by the way. But there are books like, the old Square Foot Gardening book or Jeff Ball's 60-minute garden that just meant you could work in it an hour a day. So when you plant in these wide range raised beds and you're planting very intensively and you're using a lot of natural fertilization, you're cycling out your annuals just as quickly as they've set fruit and they're dying back. You can plant so intensively and you can extend the season with row covers and such as that, that guys like Jeff Ball, he proved he could produce 400 pounds of vegetables from only 200 square feet of garden with an hour a day of work. So his book, if you want to look it up, it's Jeff Ball's 60-minute garden. You know, obviously I'm going to be planting a lot of herbs as well. I'm going to be planting hundreds of herbs, and I like my perennials. I'm not planning on getting 400 pounds of vegetables off of every 200 square feet of garden space. That's a whole lot more than I need. But if I plant about 6,000 square feet of beds in this style, I think I'm going to have thousands of pounds of vegetables and herbs. God willing, and we get normal rains like we do in the mountains, and everything goes the way it usually goes. And that'll really help me offset some of these awful inflated prices at the grocery store. I mean, everything I go buy at the grocery store has at least gone up by $1 in the past month or two. I mean, I just did a quick trip out. I got like fewer than 10 things. I mean, I was in the, like the 8 items or less line, and it cost me $50. That's crazy. I mean, I'm buying, a little meat and vegetables and some flour, and I think that was about it, right? And we're talking $50. That's crazy. And of course, gas prices. So, you know, I think it's really good to focus on growing a lot more of our own food now. And if that's something you're into, come on over to the Grow Network. Marjorie Wildcraft has that full series on growing these really intensive gardens and how to produce a ton of food to feed your family. And I'm a carnivore. I'm an omnivore, really. Uh, where I live, and probably where you live as well, that garden's going to attract a lot of wildlife. So I'm going to be setting up rabbit boxes around, and I've got my air rifle for squirrels, and I'm going to get a lot of meat out of that garden too, believe it or not. And come the season, mm, I'll take a little more deer meat probably as well because of what I'm growing in that garden. And turkeys this spring, the wild turkeys that are in big flocks all around my property will definitely also be attracted to that garden. It's kind of nice to sit on your front porch and harvest meat. And well, yeah, bear. We have a ton of black bears in the mountains, and you know, a couple of bullets from a rifle or slugs from my old shotgun can put, 300-400 pounds of bear meat into the freezer, and that really offsets inflation. So, if you want to kind of follow that journey, maybe I will document it. I hadn't thought about it. Maybe that's something I could do on my Substack. So, if you want to check me out, Judson Carroll, Master Herbalist on Substack, and sign up for my newsletter, yeah, I don't mind documenting that and putting a step by step of how to grow these gardens, how to utilize every drop of rain that falls on your property, how to reduce the need, eliminate the need really for chemical fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, have a fully, organic, better than organic is what we call it in permaculture system on actually a very small space because, I said I'm working with 10,000 square feet. An acre of land is what, 44,000 square feet or something like that. So I'm literally only looking at about a quarter of an acre with a 2,000 square foot house sitting right in the middle of it. In order to utilize space, I'm actually going to change the driveway a little bit so I can use some of what was once driveway as growing space. I've got a lot of ideas. I mean, I've got a septic tank, and I don't want to plant vegetables over the septic tank and drain field. That's not a good idea. But I can take a bunch of these trees that I'm cutting to clear land, to get some more sunlight in there, and put shiitake mushrooms. Or, you drill a hole and you put the plug of the spores in there, shiitake, lion's mane, oyster, and just stack them in that area. So, I mean, I'm literally looking at utilizing every square foot of what was before just grass, just lawn. And as I've said before, I'm not a big fan of lawns. So another message I got this past week was from my friend Tori, the clinical herbalist up in Canada. She said she enjoyed my little introduction to Latin, and she wanted to point out, I had said how Latin's important when we're identifying plant families. Like I said, plantago, which is plantain, because there's so many plants that aren't plantago that are also called plantain. And understanding, learning the Latin name really clears that up. We know we're talking about the same plant. And she said, but you really ought to mention the second part of that Latin name. She gave the example of echinacea. Now, echinacea, as we all know, is a good antiviral cold herb. I mean, echinacea has a ton of properties, and it's one that herbalists just reach for all the time. But there's various varieties of echinacea. Let's see. She said, for instance, of three species of echinacea used in medicine, which may be used interchangeably, Echinacea angustifolia may be better suited for use as an anti-infective agent or for snake bites, whereas Echinacea purpurea may be better for respiratory issues. Eupatorium purpureum is good for getting rid of stones, and hence its common name gravel root. Eupatorium perfoliatum, or bone set, is a lung herb and used for respiratory conditions that are accompanied by bone, joint, and muscle pain. The second name tells us about the individual aspects of that plant. Like I said, purpurea, purpureum, that's going to tell you it's purple. Angustifolia means it's going to have narrow leaves. I mean, we can go on and on like this. So that's another reason that having a little bit of Latin is a really good thing. And here's our little Latin for the week. Last week I told you salve is hello to one person, salvete is hello to a group. Vale is goodbye to one person. Valete is goodbye to a group. Well, a good way to follow up with that would be friend, right? You can say hello, friend, goodbye, friend. That's amica. Probably hear this all the time that a lawyer or a legal organization has filed an amicus brief. Well, amicus means friend in Latin, and that term literally means friend of the court. Well, amica is a feminine noun, so it has various modifications to make it fit the right situation. And right now I am speaking to a group, right? And whereas I could say uh, salvete discipuli and discipula, that would mean hello students. I'm going to say salvete amici, which means hello friends, because I don't really think of myself as a teacher so much as I think of myself as speaking to a group of friends. So that is our second little Latin word, amica. It could be amicae, amicus, and amici. And it is the base of that word is amo, which means to love. So you probably know that if you studied Spanish. You know, te amo. And it's very similar in French and Italian and various other languages that derive from Latin. So there's an easy one. So today, salvete amici. Now, let's talk about some herbs. All right, so from my book, Herbal Medicine for Preppers, Homesteaders, and Permaculture People, I have a chapter on herbs we can use for kidney stones, bladder, and urinary tract infections. Obviously, in normal times, you got an issue, there's probably something over the counter you can use, or you can run to a doctor. But let's say, you're on your own, you're out on your homestead, hopefully, or maybe you're in the woods and you start having an issue, or maybe you've got really bad issues with stones or recurrent infections, and what the doctor's been giving you hasn't been working a whole lot. Well, let's start with the kidney and bladder stones. Usually they were called gravel in old herbals. And let's see, Father Nape in the German folk medicine tradition recommended wild rose for gravel. Now, we talked about wild roses before. They can also be cultivated roses, but we're talking about unimproved, non-hybridized, maybe, bred improved just a little bit, like the nice tea roses that have a good scent. They're smaller flowers and they give you a nice rose hip, but we're really looking more at the wild roses. But just stay away from the ones that don't have a lot of scent, have big showy flowers, and need a whole lot of chemicals just to stay alive. Those are the ones that have been bred purely for appearance and not for use as food or medicine, which rose can certainly be. He also recommended juniper. Juniper berries are an absolute go-to as a remedy for stones and gravels, complaints of the kidneys and livers, and the only thing is they can irritate the kidneys. So if you have weak kidneys, kidney disease, probably don't use them a lot, if at all, but you don't want to use them a lot any way you look at it, because over time, the terpenes in the juniper berries can irritate the kidneys. Same thing with pine needles and such as that. A few berries just eaten for no more than 2 weeks at a time. Or if you're using some kind of juniper tincture, or which is gin, it's a little more diluted, especially if you put some good tonic water in there. And I mean homemade gin. I mean an infusion of gin. What you buy on the shelf is not normally made with actual botanicals these days, unless it's a really high-end product. But a good infusion of gin. I have a video about this on Rumble where I give herbal lessons. I'm also on Odyssey, by the way. Yeah, that's a way you can take a little more juniper a little more often without usually much irritation to the kidneys, because you don't want to drink that much in the first place because you don't want to damage your liver in the process. All right, so knotgrass is a great one. There's several grasses: knotgrass, shave grass, cat grass. There's so many really good grasses that are just excellent for getting rid of stones. Strawberries, especially your wild strawberries, your unimproved strawberries. Yes, I know those are almost impossible to find these days. In your garden, though, this spring, you can get some heirloom strawberries, which are going to have very similar properties to the wild strawberries, but they are improved, so they're a little larger and a little sweeter. Now, those strawberries are delicious. They're good for you. They're full of vitamin C, but the leaf tea has so many herbal uses. Um, Sources for wild strawberries, look for any good heirloom seed company. Now, we're talking, we want heirloom here, not hybridized strawberries. A lot of these will be ever-bearing. A lot of the more modern hybridized strawberries put out one big crop, right around the end of April, early May, and then, die back. The ever-bearing put out a small crop constantly throughout most of the year, really, and they spread by runners, and it's really like a plant one time and let it go. There's so many cool ways you can grow strawberries too. You can put them in your garden in beds, or you can put them in what they call strawberry towers or strawberry barrels. Look all that up online. There are just various ways that you can actually grow a lot of strawberries in a container. Um, it's got holes on it on every side where a little strawberry plant comes through, soil's all in the middle. And if you're in an area that doesn't get a lot of sun, or if you're in town, if you're in a condo with a little courtyard, or you're in an apartment and you've got a balcony or even just a window where you can put this, you can put it and keep rotating that container so that all the plants all around this container get enough sunlight, and you can have a lot of strawberries in a very small space. It's a really great way to do it. I think maybe Louise Riotti really pioneered the whole strawberry barrel growing system. She wrote some great books on gardening and folklore. She was a folklorist, so I always love reading her stuff. Father Kuhnsel really talked about catgrass. He liked catgrass a lot for stones. That is Agropyrum repens. Now, repens is a word that tells us it spreads. Well, most grasses spread, so if you grow it, you want to put it in a border and maybe against a walkway or something, so it's kind of hemmed in and doesn't take over. And then pick an edger and just go against the other side once a year, keep it under control. That's true of anything, all the grasses. Even you can grow spreading bamboo if you're willing to go around and trim the rhizomes off, stolons, whatever they're called, the runners that come off every maybe twice a year with a running bamboo. But of course, the minute you stop, it's going to take over. So don't delude yourself. It will definitely take over. So Maria Trevin, again, we're still in the German folk medicine tradition, recommended lady's bedstraw. Lady's bedstraw is just an excellent herb. I'll just read you what she said about it. She said, bedstraw tea rids the liver, kidney, pancreas, and spleen of toxic waste. Suffering from a disordered lymphatic system, one should drink this tea daily. It is also beneficial for anemia, dropsy, and stitch in the side. Used externally, this tea is a benefit for many skin disorders, wounds, boils, blackheads. It makes an excellent wash for the face as it tightens the skin. The fresh pressed juice of bed straw brushed on the affected part of the skin and left to dry is very beneficial. In popular medicine, she's talking folk medicine, it is recommended for epilepsy, hysteria, and St. Vitus dance, nervous complaints, suppressed urine, gravel, and stones. For goiter, gargle with the tea throughout the day. This is effective. A woman told me she had not only lost the goiter, but her thyroid gland is now working normally. So, lady's bedstraw, gallium, that's one of the herbs dedicated to Our Lady. It has a little religious significance in a lot of cultures, especially around Poland and Central Europe. An excellent herb for many conditions. And some of those are women's issues as well that she didn't even really didn't even really mention. Horsetail. Horsetail is one of those great weeds that if you can find, it has so many phenomenal uses. This is the herb that is the highest in silica. Again, in large doses over a large period of time, it can irritate the kidneys. So if you have healthy kidneys or if you're using it for a short period of time, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Really good for stones, gravel as they call it. Speedwell, which is Veronica officinalis. Excellent. That's one Maria Trevin recommended. She said it's good for jaundice, gravel in the bladder, rheumatic and gout pain in the limbs. Speedwell is very effective. Common club moss is another one of those more German type of herbs. They really like it a lot. It's in the Swedish bitters. She says it's good for gout and rheumatism, diarrhea, inflammation and hardening of the testicles, formation of gravel in the kidneys, and renal colic. Also very good for inflammations of the liver. And other herbs that have been used for kidney and bladder stones. Water plantain, that's one of those not true plantains. That's Alisma subcordatum. Uvaursi, very good not only for stones, but also for bladder infections and cystitis. Trailing arbutus, cleavers, it's another gallium, can be used much like the lady's bedstraw. Twin leaf is one of our Native American herbs. It's Jeffersonia diphylla, I believe. Root tea used for kidney stones. Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot is very effective for stones, but it looks so very much like poison hemlock. in many of its stages of growth. Don't harvest Queen Anne's lace and wild carrot to use unless you absolutely know that is Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot. It will have a little purple flower right in the middle of this big umbel of white flowers. That's the easiest way to tell. But I mean, I would recommend if you don't know this herb, don't gather it because poison hemlock is one of the most deadly herbs on the face of the earth. Now, wild carrots grow all around me in the mountains. I can go out on any day of the week during the spring and summer and probably fill a 5 gallon bucket full of them. I am very familiar with this herb, so I like it. That said, it's often recommended in foraging books as a wild food. You know, it's a tough one. The carrot root, I mean, this is the ancestor of our actual carrot, is very fibrous and tough and really has to be trimmed up a lot unless you are going to gather a bunch of them, like I could easily, and make a long cooking pot of soup. It's probably not a very practical survival food, but it's definitely good to know, especially so you don't confuse it with poisonous wild hemlock. That's the hemlock, that is deadly. White snake root, that is a eupatorium, root to use for kidney stones. Prickly pear cactus, I love prickly pear cactus. The juice from pads and fruits, very useful for kidney stones. I absolutely love the fruit of prickly pear cactus, and the pads used as Nepalis are absolutely delicious. They're also called tunas in some like Mexican grocery stores, tiendas. It comes from the Latin name optunia. It has nothing to do with a fish. But another little Latin secret there. Onions. Onions, just wild or cultivated, excellent for gravel. All right. Heartsease, which we talked about recently, that's Johnny Jump Ups, that's violet, really good. There's another plant called heartsease, which is Polygonum pesicaria. See, that's where we have one of those plants with same common name for two different plants. One heartsease is Viola trifolatum, I think, means three-colored violet, essentially. And the other is a polygonum, which means it's a member of the buckwheat family. So this member of the buckwheat family, as well as a member of the violet family, good for kidney stones. Daisy fleabane is a go-to. Origeron, really much of the Origeron family, I haven't found any that can't be used yet. Fleabane, it looks like a little daisy or something. I don't know. It's a common weed. Fleabanes grow just about everywhere. Look them up, get to where you can identify them, and start collecting them because I have mentioned before this is an excellent herb for diarrhea, colitis, inflammatory bowel. It is also excellent for stones, bladder infections, and cystitis. The whole digestive system. This is a go-to, definitely have on hand, absolutely useful herb. Very astringent, and it has some antiviral and antibacterial properties. Joe Pye weed, which is a eupatorium as well as some of the ones we discussed earlier, is also called gravel root because it's good for kidneys and bladder stones, as we just discussed. Okay, so buttonbush is an herb that was used by Native Americans, leaf tea used for kidney stones, and quackgrass, another grass, is diuretic. This quackgrass is very closely related to catgrass, and I have even read in some books that they are the same plant. I am not a grass expert. That's really something I want to get into later this year is identifying and using individual grasses. But quackgrass and catgrass are diuretic and very good for kidney and bladder stones. So definitely either of those or both of those, if they're not the same plant, I'm not sure, have on hand. So as far as bladder infections specifically, Father Nape and Father Kunzel, the whole German tradition, would recommend hay flowers. Hay flowers are simply just the flowers that are collected when gathering hay. Unfortunately, we don't have this in America anymore unless you grow it yourself because most of the hay that is fed to our animals is sprayed with Roundup before harvesting to use as a desiccant. Roundup helps dry out the hay so it doesn't rot. I think this is an absolutely horrible practice. It is just bad for the animal's health that eats it. It's bad for the farmer that sprays it. It's bad for the person who eats the animal that ate it. And we don't have all these little wildflowers that we could use as herbal remedies in folk medicine. I am absolutely opposed to any use of Roundup, bottom line. And if you're interested in hay flowers, definitely check out my book, The Herbs and Weeds of Father Johann Kunzel, that I co-wrote with Jolanta Witte. She goes into much information about how hay flowers were used and are still used in the European Alps. They are just so good for so many conditions, from arthritis to you name it. I mean, Father Nape was recommending hay flowers just all the time for all kinds of different disorders, kidney and bladder pains, whooping cough, bronchitis, colds. Really wonderful herb that I guess we just took for granted for so long that we didn't realize how valuable it was. And if you got some people that are permaculture gardeners or organic gardeners or farmers or whatever, and they're doing things the old-fashioned way and maybe even cutting their hay with a scythe, that would be cool, wouldn't it? Um, if you see somebody out in the field cutting their hay with a scythe, it's probably a pretty good sign that they're doing things the old-fashioned way. Maybe you can talk with them and get some and use them. And if you don't have my books and you just want access to that specific information, send me an email, contact me on Substack or southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com, or through any of the social media I'm on, and I will send you that information. No problem. I'd love to see people start using hay flowers the way our ancestors did. So Father Kunzel recommended goldenrod, that's Solidago, any of the goldenrods. Very good for bladder infections, also good for sore throat, diarrhea, cramps, you name it. And St. John's wort. The leaves and flowers of St. John's wort can actually be used. Most herbalists only use the flowers, but the leaves do also have some good value and can be used as a tea or a tincture. And it's good for bladder infections as well as many other things. Dead nettle, which is lamium, that's a common herb that is considered a weed in yards like plantains and dandelions and all that, which are also really good. Dead nettle is very good for bladder infections. Maria Trevin recommended corn silk. Now, corn silk is, when you get an ear of corn and you start to husk it, all these silks come out of the top. A tea made of corn silk is a classic remedy for both bladder infection and cystitis. Always save those from your corn, dry them, and use them, especially if it's corn that has been grown in an organic or better than an organic way that isn't sprayed with a bunch of chemicals. Twin leaf again, herb Robert, which is geranium. The geraniums are very good. Fleabane, which you've already mentioned, Joe Pyeweed, boneset, white snake root, horseweed, the origerans, and the eupatoriums. Any of them good, as far as I know. Any of them are good for bladder infection, cystitis. Asiatic dayflower, leaf tea used for urinary infection. Echinacea, all varieties useful for bladder and urinary tract infections, cystitis, you name it. Juniper berries, again, antiseptic for the entire urinary tract. Don't use them too much, but always good to have on hand. Maple bark tea is useful for kidney infections specifically. Uva ursi, again, that's one we're always going to mention when we're talking about such issues. Leaf tea, good for urinary tract infections as a disinfectant. Also good for bladder infections, UTIs, and cystitis. Trailing arbutus, leaf tea used for bladder and kidney infections. Cleavers, again, the galliums we already discussed. Canada violet, but really all the violets. Canada violet just seems to have most documentation, or at least that's what I found when I was writing my book. Pipsissewa, which is Chimphyla, which is also called alligator or spotted wintergreen. I've talked several times about what a useful herb this is. Very good for bladder infections and cystitis. Very pleasant tea as well. It makes a very nice tea. Licorice, excellent for the kidneys, good for bladder infections, can cause high blood pressure in certain people, so use with care. And don't ever use licorice in very large amounts or for very long periods of time. Consider that one like the juniper. We want to use a little bit for a short period of time. Wild quinine, Parthenium integrifolia, roots astringent, helps with bladder issues. Stone root, that's Collinsonia. I talked about it last week. I think, along with several of these herbs for diarrhea, but also very good for kidney and bladder infections and cystitis. Goat's rue, that's Tephrosia virginiana. It's not a rue like many of the European rues, so I just want to point that out. Good for bladder complaints. Dandelion is an absolute go-to. Probably should have mentioned it first. The root is mildly antiseptic, especially for the bladder and urinary tract. So excellent for infections, UTIs, you name it. Get some dandelion, keep it growing. Don't consider it a weed. It's a wonderful, edible, and useful herb. Birch is good for bladder infections. Fireweed, tea or tincture used for cystitis. Wild hydrangea or seven bark is a classic Native American, early American remedy for bladder infections. It could be a little toxic in high doses. Be careful with it. But let's see what I think Maud Grieve. Yeah, Maud Grieve actually wrote about it in 1931. She said that seven bark or wild hydrangea, which by the way grows all over my property, I have to tear out a ton of it to open up some beds because I have both a bush version of it and a climbing vining version of it, which is worse than kudzu or wisteria as a vining weed in my yard. So I'm going to save some of it back for medicine, but I got to get rid of truckloads of hydrangea. Yeah, I hate to do it. Yeah, it's a beautiful native plant. Yeah, I know, but it will take over. So Miss Greaves said it was diuretic, cathartic, and tonic. Decoction is said to have been used with great advantage by the Cherokee Indians and later by settlers for calculous diseases. Calculous diseases are calcifying stones, obviously. She says it does not cure stone in the bladder, but as demonstrated to the medical profession by Dr. S.W. Butler of Burlington, New Jersey, it removes gravelly deposits and relieves the pain consequent to their emission. As many as 120 calculi have been known to come from one person under its use. A lot of stones. I mean, if you've got 120 bladder or kidney stones, you're in bad shape. And yeah, so definitely worth knowing about this herb. She says the fluid extract is principally used for earthy deposits. Again, she's talking stones, alkaline urine, chronic gleat, and mucus irritations of the bladder in aged persons. Concentrated syrup with sugar or honey or a simple decoction of the root may also be used. In overdoses, it will cause vertigo, oppressions of the chest, etc. Okay, so this is not one you want to use in large amounts or for a long period of time. The leaves are said by Dr. Eoff to be tonic, siligogue, cathartic, and diuretic. So there you have it. That's a lot of herbs that can be used for kidney and bladder stones. I also should have included plantain. Check out Dr. Patrick Jones's videos, his site. He's got a lot of information on a formula he uses from several of these herbs. I believe he has plantain, dandelion, catgrass, and probably a couple others in there that I may or may not have mentioned. He's found it to be quite useful, and so always check out Dr. Jones' stuff. He's one of the best. Great guy. I mean, one of the nicest, funniest, most genuinely helpful and down-to-earth herbalist in the entire world. We all love Doc Jones. Anybody who knows Doc Jones loves Doc Jones. So and a lot of his stuff is available on the Grow Network, and some of his videos are on YouTube and stuff. I think his website is a Homegrown Herbalist. I cannot say enough good about him. Y'all have an absolutely wonderful week. Balete, mi amigo.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.